Chapter 9. Disappointments. Their hearts sank, and they turned to each other, trembling, and said, "What is this that God has done to us?" Genesis 42:28. "Oh, let's not stop here, Mama," Ada said. "I don't like this ugly place. Tell them to keep going to the pretty part." Millie took her sister's hand. "Now, Ada, there is no other place for the boat to land. I expect we shall have to walk from here." She wanted to say, "walk to the pretty part," but something heavy in her heart told her that if this was the best face Pleasant Plains could show to a new arrival, the pretty part might be harder to find than she hoped. A feeling of dread settled over her, but Millie shook it off. Surely the rest of town would be an improvement over the riverfront. As the keel of the Mary Ann grated on the gravelly shore, a tall figure in rough farmer attire came springing down the bank, calling out, "Hello, Stuart! Come at last with wife and children and all, eh? I'm glad to see ya. Never was more delighted in my life." "Hello, George," Stuart exclaimed, shaking his hand. "May I present my wife, Marcia Keith? George Ward." Stuart introduced each one of them as he handed them from the boat. "I declare I wish the missus and I lived in town," George said, "but we're 3 miles out on the prairie. I brought my team along, though, and if you'd like to pile into the wagon, all of you, I'll take you home with me." "There are quite too many of us to crowd into your home, I'm sure, Mr. Ward," Marcia said, smiling. "We would be grateful if you would take us to the best hotel." "Oh, that'll be the Union," George said. "It's not just the best hotel, it's the only hotel. Mrs. Pryor runs a clean establishment. I thought you might prefer staying in town, so she's expecting you. Here, let me carry you, bub," he said, picking Dawn up. "The soil's real sandy here, and makes heavy walking." The sand was difficult to walk in, just as the beaches of Mackinac Island had been, only without the pleasant dampness by the water's edge. Millie struggled along until she reached the wagon. The boys scrambled into the wagon's bed, while Stuart and Mr. Ward handed up first Marcia and Wealthy and then the girls. They seated themselves on bales of hay. Millie took off both of her shoes and poured a handful of sand out of each. Mr. Ward took the driver's seat, yelled to his mules, and they were off. Millie was glad for her bonnet, as there were no trees shading the wide street, only huge stumps where majestic trees had once stood. The wood from the trees had evidently been milled and turned into the buildings they were passing. Rough frame structures, many without paint, the wood already weathered to a dull gray. Wanago was the only one who seemed excited by his new home, running beside the wagon and barking happily up at Wealthy. "That's the Tanners," Mr. Ward said, proudly, as they passed yet another shabby gray building. "And this here's the bakery. You can get fresh bread most days." The shop windows were bare and unadorned, and even the signs were rough and plain. Millie was dismayed to see that the sand did not end by the riverside, but continued up into the town, piling up here and there against fences and walls. The wagon pulled up in front of a 2-story building painted bright white. "Here we are," Mr. Ward said, "the Union." Mrs. Pryor, a pleasant-faced, middle-aged woman, met them at the door with a welcome nearly as hearty as that of Mr. Ward. "I'm glad to see you," she said, bustling about to wait upon them. "We've plenty of room here in town for new folks, and especially ladies of refinement." She showed them into her parlor, the only one the house afforded. The furniture was plain, a rag carpet, green paper blinds, a table with a red and black cover, Windsor chairs, 2 of them rocking chairs with chintz-covered cushions, and the rest straight-backed and hard. On the high wooden mantel-shelf were an old-fashioned-looking glass, a few shells, and 2 brass candlesticks as bright as scouring could make them. Not one speck of dust could be seen. The window panes glistened, and the rough boards of the floor were neatly swept. "What a wonderful place," Marcia sighed. "Ha! I'm afraid it must seem a poor place to you ladies," the landlady said, pushing forward a rocking chair for each. "And you're dreadful tired, ain't you, with your long journey? Do sit down and rest yourselves." "You are very kind, and it looks like heaven after that keel boat," Marcia answered, as she accepted the offered seat and began untying Annis's bonnet strings. I didn't expect to find accommodations half so good in these western wilds, Aunt Wealthy admitted, glancing around the room. I thought you had no floors to your carpets, nor glass to your panes. Well, some houses here in town still have the hard-packed dirt, and carpenters here don't make the best of work. I think sometimes I could 'most plane a board better myself. But to get the carpets is the rub. We mostly make 'em ourselves from rags, but they don't last hardly at all. No use putting anything fine on the floor here. Soil's sandy, you see, and it wears the carpets right out. They say this country's hard on women and mules, put in Mr. Ward, and I'm afraid it's true. Millie saw Rupert's brow furrow at the mention of his mother and a mule in the same sentence, but Mrs. Pryor cut in before Rue could speak. Now, don't be frightening them first thing, Mr. Ward, laughed the landlady. We don't want them getting right back on the boat. Take off your things and the children's, ladies, and make yourselves to home. Here, just let me lay 'em in here. She opened an inner door, revealing a bed covered with a patchwork quilt. You can have this room if you like, Mrs. Keith. I suppose you'd prefer a downstairs one with the baby and the other little ones? There is a trundle bed underneath that'll do for them. And the rest of you can take the 2 rooms right over these. They're all ready, and you can go right up to 'em whenever you like. Is there anything more I can do for you now? No, thank you, Marcia said, and these rooms will be fine. Then I'll just excuse myself, she said, for I must go and see to the supper. She passed out through another door, leaving it ajar. That's the dining room, 'cause I see 2 big tables set, whispered Cyril, peeping in, and there's not a bit of carpet on the floor. Well, darling, Stuart said, putting his arm around his wife, the Lord has brought us all safely here. I'll go and see to the landing of our goods, and hope they have fared as well. Will you come along, George? Marcia kissed her husband and smiled, but Millie thought her mother's shoulders slumped just a little when he left the room. May I take the children to see their rooms? Millie asked. Yes, and help them tidy up for the supper table while you're at it, Marcia said. Millie found bare floors everywhere, of boards none too well planed either, making walking without shoes a hazard for toes. The beds were covered with homemade quilts, and everything was scrupulously clean. She poured water from a pitcher into a porcelain basin and helped the children wash their faces and hands. Stop it, Millie, Dawn said when she checked behind his ears. It's just sand, see? He rubbed his hands vigorously through his hair, and a shower of sand fell to the floor. How did you get sand in your hair? You haven't been rolling on the ground. Wind, I guess, he shrugged. But sand ain't dirt. It don't stick to you. I expect I'll never have to take a bath again living here. I expect you will, Millie said. Yes, said Fan. We can take dust baths like sparrows. Not before supper, you're not, Millie said, catching Cyril and slicking down his cowlick with a little water. Millie inspected the children, then ushered them downstairs. The gentlemen returned, and the guests were summoned to the table by the ringing of a bell on top of the house. Mama, these cups sound funny, Zillah said, tapping the side of a metal cup with a blue and white glaze. And the plates do, too. Delftware might not be elegant like china, miss, said Mrs. Pryor, but it suits us here. China cups and plates are hard to replace when they break. Now this, she tapped the side of a pitcher with her 2-pronged fork, causing it to ring like a cowbell. You can pack with you wherever you need to go. You could clobber a bobcat with one of these, and it wouldn't more than dent it. Why would one want to dent a bobcat? Aunt Wealthy asked. Every eye at the table turned on Wealthy. Millie wished she had a napkin to hide her smile, and Rue couldn't hold in his laugh, but covered it by pretending to sneeze. What? Aunt Wealthy looked around at them all. Oh, I see! You meant dent the pitcher! Stuart bowed his head, and the children followed suit. Dear Lord, he prayed, we thank you for bringing us safely to our journey's end, and ask that you bless this town, and let us be a blessing to it. Amen, Miss Pryor agreed heartily, and the meal began. After supper, Marcia produced her own bag of maple sugar to sweeten the tea. As she explained about the sugar boycott, Miss Pryor shook her head. I don't believe in slave-holding myself, she said, but I don't believe I could go as far as you folk. Good for you, though. There are some folk in this town who won't hold your opine." "What about the goods, Stuart?" asked Marcia on their return to the parlor. "I've had them carted directly to the house. That is, I believe the men are at it now." "The house?" Marcia said, surprised. "We have a house?" "It was a Hobson's choice, my dear, and you would have seen it first." "When can we see it?" "Now, if you like. It won't be dark yet for an hour. If you ladies will put on your bonnets, I'll take you round." "Ada and me too, Papa?" cried Zillah eagerly. "I'm going," said Cyril. "Me and Fan and Dawn." "You couldn't think of going without your eldest son," said Rupert, looking about for his hat. Marcia turned an inquiring eye upon her husband. "Is it far?" "No, it's on the very edge of town, but we are almost on the edge here. Even Fan can easily walk it. Let them come. You too, Millie," he said, taking Annis from her arms. "I'll carry the baby." "We'll make quite a procession," Millie said. "Won't the people stare?" "Who could help but stare at such an attractive family?" Stuart laughed. "This way!" cried Rupert, stepping back from the doorway with a commanding wave of the hand. "Procession will please move forward. Mr. Keith and wife taking the lead. Miss Stanhope and Miss Keith next in order. Zillah and Ada following close upon their heels, the three inseparables after them, while Marshal Rupert brings up the rear to see that all are in line." Everybody laughed and promptly fell into line as directed. They passed a few substantial brick homes, but most of the houses were rough-hewn wood or log cabins. Few had yards of any kind, and one had a pig sitting on the porch, enjoying the shade. People did stare from open doors and windows. Millie tried not to stare back, but Cyril and Dawn, splendid in their coonskin caps, moccasins, and gaping grins, waved and bowed at the onlookers until Stuart put a stop to it. It was not difficult at all to walk from one end of the town to the other. Soon the houses and buildings were further apart, and they started up a hill. "Do you see that yellow frame yonder, my dear?" Stuart asked, pointing to a large building on the side of a hill. "Oh my," Marcia said. "I don't see it." Wealthy squinted. "Is it behind that barn?" "That's not a barn. It's a house," said Stuart. "Our house." "No, I mean the barn with the gable end to the street and two doors in it, one above and one below," Wealthy said. "That's the one I'm looking at." "I'm looking at the same," said Stuart. "It looks like a warehouse, Papa," Rue said in dismay. "Well, it was a warehouse, until recently, but it is the only building large enough to accommodate a family of our size." He looked at the building. "It has several rooms inside, and I'm sure we can make something of it." A warehouse. Marcia stood for a moment. Millie stood close and put her arm around her mother's waist. She could feel the tension in Mamma's muscles, but not a sign of it showed on her face. "It is a poor place to take you to, my dear," Stuart said, "but it was a Hobson's choice, as I said. There really is no other." Marcia looked at the building for just one moment more, then stood on tiptoe to kiss her husband's cheek. "Can't you just imagine Joseph saying that to Mary?" She made her voice deep. "It's a Hobson's choice, my dear. This was the only stable available in Bethlehem." "God had a plan for them, Stuart, and he has a plan for us, too." "We'll soon have our things, everything you need to make it a home," Stuart said, relief obvious in his voice. "I have everything I need to make it a home right here with me," Marcia said, taking his arm. He put his hand over hers, and they started on together. Millie hung back. The feeling of dread she had experienced upon arriving in Pleasant Plains was not only sinking in, it was taking root in her soul. Stables were perfectly all right for Bible stories. It was nice to think about the baby and the sweet-smelling hay at Christmas time, but this wasn't a Bible story. It was real life. She tried to hold her feelings inside, but they boiled up. "It's horrid!" The words were out of Millie's mouth before she could stop them. "How can Papa expect our Mama to live there? It isn't a house at all. It fronts on the street, and the door opens right out onto a sandbank." "There's a big yard at the side and behind," said Zillah. "Something green in it, too," added Ada. "Those are weeds." The blur of tears in Millie's eyes made the weedy yard swim, looking almost like a garden. If she cried hard enough, this horrible thing might look a little like the home they had left with its large garden and endless flower beds. The June roses and the woodbine must be out by now. The air is sweet with their delicious perfume. But they, and those who had planted and tended them, were far away from this desolate spot. How could she write to her friends that she was living in a warehouse? Not a tree, a shrub, a flower, or a blade of grass, Zillah said.
Never mind, we'll have lots of flowers next year, said Rupert.
The front door was wide open, as the last load of their household goods was just being brought up from the river, so the Keiths walked right in. The men were carrying in the heavy boxes and setting them down upon the floor of the large room.
Where's the entry hall? Asked Cyril.
There isn't any, Zillah said. No cupboards or closets at all, just bare walls and windows.
Don't forget the floors and ceilings, Rupert said. They are important too.
And a door on the other side, said Ada, running across the room and opening it. Not a mantelpiece to set anything on, nor any chimney at all. How on earth are we going to keep warm in the winter time? Millie asked despairingly.
With a stove, miss. Pipes run up through the floor into the room above, said one of the men, wiping the perspiration from his forehead with the sleeve of his shirt.
Stuart stopped to settle with the man for their work, and the family walked on into the next room. It was as bare as and darker than the first, though somewhat larger. It had only one window and an outside door, opening directly upon the side street. Behind the two rooms was a small kitchen with a chimney and a fireplace, and a small closet under a flight of steep, crooked stairs that led from the kitchen to the story above.
Look at this, Don said, dragging something huge and hairy out of the closet.
Wanago threw himself on it with a savage growl. Ada screamed, but Stuart laughed.
It's a buffalo robe, he said. I wonder how it got here. It could have been left by a mountain man, or perhaps it once belonged to an Indian.
Can we keep it? Cyril asked.
I don't see why you shouldn't, Stuart said. The owner seems to have left it for you.
After examining the robe and running their fingers through the coarse brown hair, the children climbed the crooked stairs, followed by Aunt Wealthy and Marcia. The upper floor consisted of two rooms, the first extending over the kitchen and sitting room. There was a door on one side. Wealthy opened it and peered out at the thin air beyond.
"Oh, my! That's quite a first step," she said, looking at the sheer plunge to the street below. "What an odd place for a door! Do you think they ever planned to put stairs outside? But the sky is so beautiful, it's almost like a doorway to heaven."
"You might get to heaven more quickly than you would like if you stepped out," exclaimed Marcia. On the other side of the room was another door, which opened into the front room of exactly the same size. There was no way to reach it without passing through the first room.
"Not much privacy,"
Rouge said. "Millie's right," Zillah said. "This isn't a house. How will we even live in it? I want my own room." Marcia stood in the first upper room, turning from side to side, a look of bewilderment on her face. Aunt Wealthy, who had pulled the door to heaven shut, saw it and came to the rescue.
"Never mind, dear. It will look very different when we have unpacked and arranged your furniture. Do you know that in China they make walls out of paper? With the help of curtains, several rooms can be made out of this, and will do nicely."
"No doubt," Marcia answered. "This front room shall be yours."
"No, no, you and Stuart must take this one."
"I'm quite set on having my own way," Marcia said. "It is the best room, and you must take it. Besides, I should be afraid to have the little ones in there, with that outside door opening onto nothing."
"We'll nail it shut," Wealthy said, "just in case." "Well, wife, what do you think?" asked Stuart, coming up the stairs.
"I think it will keep the rain off and the children in," Marcia said, "and it's a great deal nicer than a tent. What more could we ask?" "I think we could ask for a lot more," Millie said. "It's a great big dirty barn, with plaster all over the floor, and spattered on the windows, too."
"I hope it can be cleaned," her father said, laughing at her rueful face. "Mrs. Pryor can probably tell us where to find a woman to help with it."
Stuart and Marcia seemed determined to discuss plans for the arrangement of the inside of the dwelling, so Millie went back downstairs and stepped outside. The scene had not improved. In one direction, she saw only a wall of rough weatherboarding with one window in the second story. In the other direction, a heap of sand and a wilderness of weeds. Behind the house was a small stand of willows and a cowshed. Beyond that, a grassy hillside. "Could you show me the reason for bringing us here, Lord?" Millie said out loud. "Because I'm dumb with despair."
"Can dumb folks talk?"
Cyril asked, coming up behind her. The family was pouring out the door, like ants from a nest.
"We'll cover it with vines," said Aunt Wealthy, seeing Millie's look.
"And I'll clear the yard and sod it," added Rupert, seizing a great mullein stalk and pulling it up by the roots as he spoke. "Won't be nearly as hard as clearing the early pioneers of Ohio had to do, our grandfathers among them."
"We will be pioneers ourselves," responded Stuart, who had followed them outside.
"Almost pioneers. Let's walk down the hill and around the other side."
They followed the road past the yellow house and down the hill. Their nearest neighbor on the hillside lived in a shabby 1.5-story frame house with a blacksmith shop attached. The sign over the door read G. Lightcap, but there was no smoke from the stovepipe, nor anyone in the yard. The road curved sharply back down the hill to the center of town, and the Keiths made their way back to the Union. Mrs. Pryor joined her guests in the parlor that evening.
"Well, how did you like the house?" she asked.
"I'm sure we will be able to make ourselves comfortable there," Marcia said. Mrs. Pryor nodded approvingly.
"You can get possession right away, I suppose?"
"Yes, but there is some cleaning to be done first, and we'll need help." Mrs. Pryor recommended a woman for that without waiting to be asked, and offered to send round at once and see if she could be engaged for the next day. The offer was accepted with thanks, and the messenger brought back word that Mrs. Root would be at the house by 6 o'clock in the morning.
"But," suggested Aunt Wealthy in dismay, "she'll need hot water, soap, cloths, and scrubbing brushes."
"I'll lend a big iron kettle to heat the water," said the landlady. "A fire can be made in that kitchen fireplace, you know, or outdoors with the brushwood."
"And brushes and soap can be had at the store, I presume?" suggested Stuart.
"Yes, and if they ain't open in time, I'll lend mine for her to start on."
"Thank you very much," said Marcia. "But, Stuart, we may as well unpack our own. I can tell you just which box to open."
"You amaze me, Marcia," he said. "Can we be up in time to be on hand at 5:30?"
"We can try. Mrs. Pryor, where is your market? I have not seen it yet."
"We haven't got that civilized yet, ma'am," replied the landlady, laughing and shaking her head.
"No market? How do you manage?"
"There's a butcher's shop where we can buy fresh meat once or twice a week. Beef, veal, mutton, lamb, just whatever they happen to kill. And we put up our own salt pork, hams, dried beef, and so forth, and keep codfish and mackerel on hand. Most folks have their own chickens, and the country people bring 'em in too, and butter and eggs and vegetables, though a good many town folk have gardens of their own and keep a cow for milk and butter."
"Then I think we must have a little brown cow with big brown eyes," Stuart said, "for my children must have milk."
"We get a cow?" Fan said, clapping her hands in delight.
"But who will milk it for us, Papa?" Zillah asked.
"We're on the frontier now," Rue said, sagely. "I expect folks have to milk their own cows."
"Oh, and afore I forget," said Mrs. Pryor, as she produced a packet of mail, "Mr. Ward dropped these off for you. Had 'em under the wagon seat the whole time." Stuart took the mail, and everyone waited as he sorted it. 2 letters for Wealthy from the Dinsmores, her southern relatives, several for Marcia from friends and neighbors in Lansdale, and 1 envelope for Millie, fat with pages from A, B, and C. Aunt Wealthy read the family news from the Dinsmores aloud. Everyone at the Roselands plantation was well, but Horace Dinsmore, Jr. was still away at college and had not been heard from in some time. Millie carried her own letters up to her room and lit the lamp. She crawled into bed and pulled the covers up around her before she opened the envelope. "Dear Millie," Camilla wrote, "how I envy you the marvelous adventures you write about. Suddenly, the handwriting changed, and B's flowery script continued. Do tell all about Dr. Fox. Is he terribly handsome? Are Aunt Wealthy and Dr. Fox corresponding? An ink blot, and then in Camilla's precise blocky letters again. How I envy you the solitude you must occasionally experience. B is driving me absolutely insane. If I hear one more word about the summer dance. B seemed to have wrestled the quill from Camilla's fingers once again. I am getting to stay up late. I convinced Aunt Alicia, my mother's great aunt, to petition Mother, who petitioned Father, who said he would think about it. I spent hours, simply hours in prayer, and Father said yes. He said yes. The rest of the page was filled with Bee's plans for the party. She was plotting to dance with Frank Osborne and at least 3 other boys. She told every detail of her gown, slippers, and hair combs. Camilla had given up and used her own page to continue, filling Millie in on the goings-on at school. Frank had taken first place in the exams and was planning to avoid Bee at the dance. Annabeth, too quiet to fight with the other 2, had added her own special page with a pressed flower and illustrations of her own designs along the borders. The room seemed to fill with their voices as Millie read. She pressed the flower to her face and could just smell the faintest hint of Lansdale, of gardens and summer breezes. This isn't Pleasant Plains. It's Unpleasant Plains, she cried. The tears flowed freely, and Millie buried her head in her pillow and sobbed. Why, Lord? Why have you brought us to this terrible place? I'm sure I can't bear it. I can't bear it. When the tears subsided, Millie picked up her Bible and opened it, intending to read from the book of Psalms, where she often found comfort. The book fell open to the 45th chapter of Isaiah, and as she glanced down, her attention was distinctly drawn to some words on the page. I will give you the treasures of darkness, riches stored in secret places, so that you may know that I am the Lord, the God of Israel, who summons you by name. Read verse 3. Millie read the words again slowly. They seemed alive somehow, like they were speaking right to her. Millie's heartbeat quickened. Could this be what Mama was talking about, when she said that sometimes a scripture just jumps out at her? Sweet comfort spread through her. Treasures of darkness? Riches stored in secret places? Why do I suddenly feel such an odd sense of peace? Millie studied the page in silence. Lord, this passage is about someone named Cyrus, but are you trying to tell me something? Millie waited for a reply, but heard none. Still, she wondered, could God have something special for them in this gloomy place? Could there be treasure she couldn't yet see? I'm sorry I was so disappointed in our new house, God. I'm sorry I let my words spill out and make the children disappointed too. Show me what your plans are, Lord. Help me be strong. Help me trust you.